It's 28 degrees Celsius in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Good morning and welcome to your daily dose of sunshine, Sunrise Daily. I'm Maupe Ogun Yusuf.
It's +1 in Lagos, Nigeria. I'm Ayamakine. Good morning and welcome. And by the way, just to remind you, today is the 14th day in the month of April 2025.
14 in the month of April. It's a significant day in Nigeria. It's a day when over 200 girls were stolen from Chibok, in the northeast of the country. Really a sad day. But today, we're taking you to another state in the northeast of the country. It's the Bauchi state, and this time around, we're showing you a skyline that perhaps you want to stay in the skies to admire for a little while longer, while we're saying welcome back to Ayo. Yes, this is the government reservation area. Well, sometimes it's called the government residential area, because in some places, that's where the government house is located. In the instance of Bauchi, indeed, this is where the government house is located. You also have a number of other residential buildings in this area of green. It also happens to house an old airstrip. If you look very closely, you'll see the airstrip right there, just in case you're wondering where Bauchi is. Bauchi is neighbors with Plateau State, neighbors with Jigawa State, neighbors with quite a number of states in the northwest of the country. But Bauchi itself is in the northeast of the country. Sometimes you can call it a transition between the east and west, but the people of Bauchi are as mixed and as varied, a people of great pride, who hold their heads very high as they ought to, because they come from a very strong lineage. They have a very, very strong heritage. But right now, Bauchi is also modernizing very fast. And as you can see in the picture, it looks like it can only get better in the state. Ayo.
Well, Bauchi is definitely one of those states that is also very ambitious in terms of agriculture. And the signs, the green you can see, reminds me of T.Y. Bellow's song, The Land is Green. So please, again, let me reiterate. See how far back the green goes. So those of you who have been thinking that, Bauchi is in the north, and north is all brown, all restive, all insecurity and all, please spare that thought, or perish the thought, as they say. Bauchi is green, it's lush green, as you can see. And in fact, Mark, when you began to talk about the capacity of the state and its potential in terms of economic manpower, it just takes my mind back to the trip that I went on. Look at it. Bauchi has a food security program which they call agro-industrial processing, Bauchi agro-industrial processing zone. Whether or not it is part of the AFDB, okay, I think it is also part of the AFDB initiative, the SAPZ. And all I can say for now, Markwe, is if we get it right in that department, with this initiative coming from various states, all 36 states I hear are going to be covered, then you can be sure that this whole idea of food security is here to stay. Markwe.
Indeed, and why will you not be thinking why won't you be thinking about food, Ayo? Haven't been away monitoring the development in the SAPZ, seeing the launch of the very first phase of the SAPZ program in Nigeria. Ayo, you certainly have a lot to tell us about that, visiting Kaduna and Cross River states where these programs were launched, and that interview you had with the president of the AFDB, Dr. Akinwumi Additional. Quite an eye-opener, I must say, that the AFDB is thinking about young people and thinking about agriculture as a tool of empowerment, understanding as Dr. Additional pointed out, that young people are not seeking freebies. What they're seeking is wealth in their hands, wealth that they can work for. And he's showing the way to do this is actually to go through agriculture. I remember parts of the interview where he talked about how you have the drivers of insecurity and you know, when you have a particular triangle, the triangle of climate and environmental degradation, high level of unemployment, high level of poverty, these are the things that, you know, keep a people down. And he says that one of the ways that government, one of the very viable ways that governments can get out of this is to, you know, use agriculture as a tool. And, you know, one of the things I find very consistent about Dr. Akinwumi Adesina is that he's believed in this gospel, he's mouthed it, he's lived it, he's seen it work in some places, and he's very eager to see how it can be implemented in Nigeria. Ayo, can you tell us what it was like, you know, your visit to Kaduna, your visit to Cross River, and how optimistic you are about the launch of the SAPs in Nigeria?
Well, Markwe, it's very humbling. I have to begin by saying, you know, to be on that road trip, if I can, well, some cases air trip, you know, but it's very, very significant that now we are taking agriculture the way it ought to be taken. Agribusiness. In fact, that's the language now in the industry, in agriculture. It's a lot more talk about agribusiness as opposed to agriculture. SAPZ, the special agro-industrial processing zones, they are agribusiness hubs. That's the way, you know, it has come to be identified now. And the point is, because pointedly I asked the president of the AFDB, help us understand this government-enabled, private sector, you know, led project. Because my own concern had always been, and it's the experience a number of people have had, once government is involved, it has a toga around it. And he said, look, as far as he's concerned, as going by the design, it's government-enabled because government is going to provide the land and government is going to provide the electricity and other basic infrastructure, like, you know, as that. The private sector is the one that gets the job done, uses it for the agricultural initiatives for which it is intended and all of that. And that's you know, amazing. That made a lot of sense to me. The concern that I have had is in its communication. Thankfully, the two state governments took the initiative to make sure that those, the groundbreaking happened in their states, and was broadcast live on Channels Television. That should tell a number of people, you know, how important the whole thing is. A number of things that I picked from those two cities, Markwe. Number one, it rained during the groundbreaking both ways. In Kaduna, the rain started during the groundbreaking when the governor of the state was, you know, taking a speech. But in Calabar, it rained well before, you know, the whole thing started. And it was very, very, very interesting. And, of course, everyone saw the rains as signs that, indeed, the good times are here. But, you know, there was a concern that I had. I can't wait for the Lagos-Calabar, the coastal highway, because our crew that traveled to Calabar, they were on the road from 7 a.m. till about 4 a.m. And that, you can just imagine how many, of course, man hours they lost, and the wear and tear on the body, and then the fact that they had to now start preparing for the program itself. Now, it is nothing but, it has nothing to do but the roads. So we can't wait, dear federal government, for the coastal highway to Calabar to get ready so everyone can have peace. We know that some people may not like the idea, but please, it is not for now. It's not for your profit today. It's for the future. It's for the children that are yet to be born, who we should not leave the same problem of poverty for. So, that interview was exclusive, the one you were talking about. We were the only media house I know at all who had any interview, a sit-down, one-on-one like that with the president of the AFDB. And I'm glad that it came out the way it did. The thing you said about young people, it's been my personal desire to get people to know that let's push out the information and let people do with it what they like.
Well, just in case you missed that interview, we have an excerpt for you to listen to. You can always get the full length of the interview on our website, channelstv.com. And for young people who are wondering, what is this about? I mean, what is in it for me? I strongly recommend that interview to you, and also a checkout of the AFDB's website to see how you can key into the SAPZs around your area. But here's part of what Dr. Akinwumi Adesina had to say.
Now, in the case of young people, I go around, it's the Jacqua syndrome that you mentioned. It's a big loss for us out of Nigeria and many other countries. And what we've got to do about this will be as follows, and we are doing something about it. First and foremost, is to recognize that young people don't need freebies. We don't need people just saying, oh, well, I just want to give you a youth empowerment program. What does that mean? You know, I go around Africa, people tell me all that, oh, we have a youth empowerment program. So what exactly is it? Youth don't need that kind of empowerment freebie, little things you are throwing to them. They have skills, they have knowledge, they have entrepreneurship capacity. They want to turn their ideas into great businesses. And so what the young people need, it's not those so-called empowerment programs. They need capital. They need you to put your money at risk on their behalf. Look, I'm a banker. You walk into the bank, you know, and you see young people. A young person, 21 years old, comes into the bank. You ask them in your risk assessment, the only thing you see is risk, risk, risk. And so you go ask them for securities that they need to bring to you. You have a house, you have a land, you have this, you have tax for the last 40 years. I'm only 21 years old, you know. And so the whole of the system is not designed, is what I'm saying, for young people. The commercial banking system, the financial system has failed young people in Africa. We have over 465 million young people. You're getting them between the age of 15 and 35 that you are adding. Where's the financial markets for them? Why is that suddenly a surprise to us that they are leaving? It's because you're not putting anything there for them, you know. And so we must recognize that the young people are our biggest assets. You know, demographic asset has to become an economic asset. And to do that, you have to put capital. That's why, actually.
Well, indeed, that was some of that particular interview. We'll take a break at this point, and when we come back, we'll be taking a look at a host of issues, including the politics of Anambra State as the November elections are coming up ahead. Do stay with us.
The International Convention Center, ORCA, is agog with the presence of thousands of late Senator Ifeanyi Uba's support groups from the All Progressives Congress, APC, who have decided to align with Governor Chukwuma Soludo due to what they describe as his leadership style that has set Anambra on the rise. While the leader of the defecting groups highlights the good works of Governor Soludo, he urges ABGA family to receive them with love as they are coming in to help the Soludo re-election bid.
Your innovative strides, the roads that stretch like arteries of progress, the security that restores peace to our lives, the economic blueprints that awaken hope are not mere policies, they are the co-effect of governance.
The ABGA state chairman gives them assurances that they are now all one and decorates them with the ABGA uniform.
We have always been progressives. Where you were progressives. Here in Africa, we are progressives. So you've taken the right decision of coming back to the founding progressive party in Nigeria. I say to all of you, you are welcome. You are welcome. No.
Appreciating the support, Governor Soludo says the late senator will be immortalized while he continues to work for the growth of Anambra.
I want to join in welcoming you, I repeat for the second time, welcoming you back into the fold.
the All Progressives Grand Alliance, the family that you belong in. What I see is one indivisible Anambra State. One people, one agenda, and that agenda is the transformation and development of Anambra State.
Governor Soludo's support base seems to be getting stronger by the day as members of the Odenigbo political vanguard, who are members of the People's Democratic Party, are also backing him for the November elections.
We are like Ondesa political party. 25 members of ward executive, 25 members of state executive, local government executive. We decided, Ward 326, we decided to collapse it formally because we have seen the best, because everybody loves a winner.
The governor notes that the group's grassroots structures in its 326 wards affirm them as a formidable force and welcomes them as equal members.
Whether you joined 23 years ago when APGA was registered in 2002, or whether you just joined a few minutes ago, you are all equal members of APGA.
The APGA governorship campaign will kick off by June, and members of the opposition defecting to APGA say they are doing so to ensure he is victorious.
So we're sinking our teeth now into the politics in Anambra State, and we're being joined via Zoom by Mr. Fab Ozoigbo, who's a political analyst. Mr. Ozoigbo, thank you for staying with us on the program this morning.
Thank you, my dear.
So let me start by asking you, as you look ahead of the November 2025 elections coming up for Anambra State, do you think that this is a smooth sailing for APGA? Because it doesn't look like there's a real opposition against the political party.
Well, in my own thinking, at my age, I'll be able to assess properly and tell you what the true position is. APGA is working, but other people who are coming up are trying to say we will surpass what APGA is doing already. But how far that will be will depend on how the people see each participant. Strongly, you have the APC, you have the Labour Party trying to struggle it out with APGA in the state, and you have YPP coming up also. You have PDP also coming up. The electorate will decide whether what APGA is doing today is sustainable for them or is what they want, or if APGA doesn't satisfy them, what else can they do? Who else can potentially upturn APGA? So it's something too early for any person to forecast what may happen. But as far as I'm concerned, APGA has done some job. The governor has done some job. But we still believe that when people come up with their programs, we will now look at them and see who is better or who can surpass what APGA is doing already. But for sure, there are people who want to take over, and we are watching.
You say it's too early, but for a party that is currently incumbent, as the APGA is currently the incumbent party in power, led by Professor Soludo, if the opposition is going to gain ground, shouldn't they be gaining ground by now? We saw a situation within the PDP, for instance, where there was a lot of reluctance for people to even come and buy the forms of the party. And people always also wonder if the APC is alive and well in Anambra State. So they're wondering, if the opposition parties are, living up to the billing of opposition party, if they're really to give APGA a run for its money come November.
Yes, what I mean by it's too early to make prediction and then say exactly what the whole state will look like towards November is that most of the parties have not, given us their manifestos, so that we can compare them with what APGA is doing already. Professor Soludo, I don't criticize people just for criticizing's sake. I believe Professor Soludo is doing some work. But by the time we see the manifesto for other parties, we're able to, look at them properly, objectively, and say, yes, we have one or two who can surpass what is done already. Because all over the world, in other climes, politics is done based on manifestos, and people mean their manifestos. People want to do their manifestos. Well, in Nigeria, people are still learning to do their manifestos because it is the manifestos that gives you the ingredients of what the man is trying, the vision of the man, what the man is trying to offer. And it is the manifestos that will help us now compare and contrast if Soludo is doing better or if he's going to continue. But the good thing about Anambra today is that Anambra people still believe that the zoning that has been in Anambra, it will still continue. That's why people are looking at the southern area for their candidates, to come from there. But as far as we are concerned, to me, I think it's too early to make proper predictions until you see the manifestos, until you see what the visions of other parties are. You can't make a reasonable comparison between them and the present AFDB government.
Let me take this conversation to my colleague in Lagos, Ayo.
Of the party. Apologies for that. Now, you also heard something that the governor said earlier, that irrespective of how long you've been away from the party, for how long you've joined the party, whether you joined a long time ago or you just joined 2-3 hours ago, you are equal members of the party. How does that sound to you? Does that sound like, okay, the newest person in the party can also contest for office or have equal stake with anyone who's been there for a long time?
I didn't hear you clearly.
Can you hear me, sir?
I can hear you now, but I didn't hear what you said earlier.
Okay. I said, when the governor was talking about equal membership, he said that whether you joined a long time ago or you just joined it some hours ago, you are equal members of the same party, of APGA. Does that in any way suggest that everyone has equal stake, irrespective of for how long they've slaved for the party, so to speak?
Well, if I can get you clearly, what the governor is suggesting or what he's saying is his personal view about his party and himself. I still insist that when we hear other views, we're able to compare what he's saying and then what others want to do, to be able to make proper prediction, to be able to make, what content they have in all the groups, to be able to say that Soludo will continue or not. But as far as the state is concerned, as I said earlier, that Soludo is doing some job, but we would like to look at other parties' manifestos, want to look at Labour, want to look at APC, want to look at PDP, YPP manifestos. We need to look at all these things and be able to compare what they have in their team with what Soludo is doing. This is not the time for criticism, for now. It's the time to compare and contrast and be able to make predictions. If at a number of people, we are looking for the best, and the best will only come when we know every person is contesting and what makes them tick or not.
Okay. Now, speaking to that, there are some people who would wonder, what else do we want as a people? Now, there are a number of people who would want to first of all ask you, are you saying by any chance that the governor is underperforming?
No, I didn't say he's underperforming. You see, performance is relative. You can only give what you have. You can't give what you don't have. So it's too early to say if he's underperforming until you see other people who want to perform. Now, if somebody is doing some roads, is offering some infrastructural development, and is offering some certain things on security, it's hard to say he's underperforming. But when others come with superior manifestos that will, should make his own ordinary, we will look at them and then compare. But to say he's underperforming now will be just begging the issue. As far as I'm concerned, there is no basis to make that, a sanction for now, until we see other people's manifestos and what they have in their manifestos, we cannot say he's underperforming. I can't say, at my age, I can say that somebody who is doing some work around the state is underperforming. Until we see what others plan to do, then we can compare properly.
Okay, it's interesting because what plays in my head, sir, is a comparison of a managing director in an organization that is doing very well. It's on contract. It's on a 4-year contract. Managing director of this organization, doing wonderfully well and being praised by members of staff of the organization. It's an international conglomerate, and everyone is praising this guy.
I'm not hearing you properly. I'm not hearing you properly.
Can you hear me better now?
I can hear you better now, yeah.
Wonderful. So I'm saying that, based on what you said, let's compare, the governor with an MD, a managing director of an international organization, a conglomerate that is doing wonderfully well. All the staff are praising him. All the stakeholders are praising him. All the members of the board are saying he's doing very well. And then someone comes and says, he's doing very well, but he's on contracts. He's doing exceptionally well. We bandied some manifestos before we employed him. Now we need to employ another one. Well, we need to consider another one. Even though this one is doing very well, let's consider other people's application before we reapply or reconfirm this fellow for a second contract. That sounds like what you are saying right now. I'm wondering, how do you think that people of Anambra would react to that?
What you're saying is different from what I'm saying. You are saying in a company where every person is shouting Hosanna for the managing director. That's not the situation in Anambra State. Every person is not shouting Hosanna for a governor. I'd like to give an example. The security issue was just started just this year, after about 2 or 2 years of suffering. So some people don't pick that as a very good day. But for the fact that it started now, it's still all right. But it's not like the comparison you're making. Every person is not shouting Hosanna in Anambra State for him. Some people still believe he's doing some development. Quite all right. They have not gone to all parts of the states. And there are some people also complaining that I said he's performing. Means it's just my maturity that he's doing some work, some infrastructure work, until we see what others want to say and want to do. But that does not mean that every person is shouting Hosanna for the present governor. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true.
Now, trust is a difficult thing to build, Mr. Anambra, and I'm wondering how you think that can happen. As you said, the governor was not really doing enough. Perhaps I don't know. He will want to speak to that himself. But then you said now that he's begun to do some things. Could it be that he's begun to do these things because he's looking for second term, or he was taking stock so that he can actually begin to do these things sustainably?
Yes, there is always absolute truth. Both of them can be correct, depending on who is looking at the issues. He could be taking his stocks. If that is all right, that is all right. But to average Anambra person, a lot of blood has been shed before he started taking this particular action. But that he started taking is good for people like us. That he started taking action. One would have said that this might be for election period. Like I was going through Anambra State, and I've seen massive destruction of roads. Not destruction per se, but trying to excavate things for new things to pass through. But one would wonder, why do all these things in rainy season? Would the rains allow this road to go to its full completion? Well, I'm not in the government. I have some friends in government. But the issue is this. Everything being done now will be looked upon as election year program. Whether they will continue after the election is something we're not sure of. But they would have been better if they were done earlier, especially security. You see, one single person's blood is too much for every other thing. But that he has started doing something is left for a number of people to compare when the right time comes. But for the security, for the road infrastructure that is going on, whatever he does today is for a number of people. But the timing, some people might question, is not right. They might be all for the election purpose. But be that as it may, we want to see people who will do better things than him. If they have, let them show us.
Okay.
That's my take.
Okay. Well, the governor will have to, come speak for himself, because there are those who would say that the insecurity issues predate the governor, and but he'd have to come speak for himself. But lastly from me to you, let me ask you, what's your assessment of the communication between government and the people of Anambra has been like under the Soludo administration for the past almost 4 years? What's your assessment of how the communication between government and the people are? How government gives information and how the people, give the feedback, and vice versa. Did you see any communication? Have you seen good communication that led to significant development or a sense of ownership from the people to the government?
Okay, my dear. To me, I'm wrong, but the communication issue is still very, very low. I think I watched the governor saying that I'm from Ihala. I watched the governor saying that maybe security issues are giving him a problem in Ihala. That's why development is not going on in Ihala. I say, who will provide the security? Who do that but for the government? So my take is this. The communication, there's serious communication gap between the governor presently, in my own understanding, and what he's doing. Unless I didn't hear the media right, if I didn't get what he said right. Because if you're saying that security or cooperation with the people is not making it to work, who will make them cooperate with you? But you have the power. You're elected to help the people. And so these 4 years is for you. And then if you communicate with them well, what your problems are, what you think is your problem, they will understand if they are not being unnecessarily obstructive. But if you communicate properly, that's where I think the information commissioner should examine if what they're doing is what they think benefit the people. But I don't want to have excuses like other people won't like to have excuses, where people say that the people's non-cooperative attitude or insecurity is making them develop the place. Who provide the security in the first instance? Is it not the governor? Is it not the government? We're all part of the government. And I will say something here. When people go to governance in Nigeria, near Anambra State properly, people tend to look at this as a family thing. The government belongs to the people. You should explain to them what you are doing. Take time to explain to them what you are doing, because the money you are spending is their money. It's not your private money. If you take time to explain to them what you are doing, they will appreciate you better. So if they're listening to what we are saying or what I'm saying, they should be able to send people to explain what they're doing, their difficulties, their good moments, and those who criticize properly, objectively. We know when to criticize them, because I don't criticize at all times. You just criticize properly. Where something is not being done well, you say it. Where things are being done well, you say it. But in terms of communication, I think there is a low degree percentage there.
Mr. Ozoigbo, I don't know. Do you think that the people of Anambra are sentimental about APGA? Because, APGA has been in power since 2003 in Anambra State, and it would seem that regardless of all of the other shenanigans that have happened with political parties around the Southeast, APGA seems to have held on very strongly in Anambra. Do you think that it could also involve some sentimentality here, and perhaps that sentimentality might see them through the November elections?
Yes, I understand your sentiments. The sentiment is there quite all right. But the truth is this. The people of Anambra State are hungry, very, very hungry for development. So if you have been under a certain sentiment for a long period, this is the time to re-examine the situation. But that is when you have an alternative. Until the alternative starts coming, one wouldn't say what will happen next. The sentiment is there because of Ojuku, because of other people. I can tell you, the last governor before this governor had his hand, put squarely on security. We had wonderful security in Anambra State before he left. But immediately after he left, we started having a lot of things happening in Anambra State. Because without security, you can't have any good development. But thank God they have just started this year. And those who are doing, doing the security thing, I think they are doing fine. But how people will analyze the security started this year is a different ballgame when the election comes. Whether this is being done for election or not. But ultimately, I know that God gives power. If God knows that this is from the bottom of their heart and is from a good conscience, God will reward any person who does anything good. But if it's not from good conscience, I believe something will happen that will not be palatable to them.
Well, it's certainly fingers crossed and eyes at the eyes in Anambra. We have to thank you very much for coming on the program this morning. Mr. Fab Ozoegbo is a political analyst and also a political commentator. Thank you so much for coming on Sunrise Daily.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
Well, we'll take a break now, and when we come back, we'll be turning our eyes to the power sector. What is happening with the sanctions recently imposed on some DisCos in recent times? We'll be taking a look at that when we come back from this break. Please stay with us. The regulator of the power sector, the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, the NERC, recently sanctioned 8 DisCos, 8 distribution companies, for failing to adhere to the monthly energy caps imposed on estimated billing for unmetered customers. So we understand that they're not supposed to go above a certain cap every month for customers that have not yet been metered. We understand that some of these DisCos include the Abuja DisCo, the Ikeja Electric Distribution Company, Eko Electricity Distribution Company, Enugu, Jos, Kaduna, Kano, and Yola Electricity Distribution Companies. These are the airing DisCos. But what does this mean? And what does it also mean for the consumers? So what does it mean for the DisCos on the one hand, and what does it mean for the consumers as well? We're being joined this morning by Mr. Ayodele Oni, who's an energy expert. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily. It's good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
So, Mr. Oni, can you tell us what your own reading of this is? Because we hear about this monthly cap that DisCos are not supposed to go above for unmetered customers. Is it that, you know, what exactly should it mean, really?
Okay, so first, we need to understand what estimated billing is. Estimated billing means that the DisCo estimates your power usage and then issues a bill. Now, with respect to capping estimated billing, we didn't just get there in 2020 or 2025. We had a number of regulations and orders between 2007 and 2012. In 2012, we had one with a methodology for estimating billing, but that didn't succeed as much because you had challenges with metering even the feeders and the transformers. So the NERC rethought that arrangement, and then in 20, that capping. What it does do is cap the number of kilowatt hours, you know, yield per kilowatt hour. So it caps the kilowatt hour by the business units and those feeders in those areas. And it's such that, I mean, I still think there'll be a bit of challenge because the DisCos then may have done an area and still are able to charge that amount. But what estimated billing is they estimate what they think you've used and then charge you. But it's now capped. You can't do more than a particular a kilowatt hours a month. That's what it is now.
In spite of how much electricity, this is despite how much electricity is supplied to those particular feeders per month. Is that correct?
Yes, yes. It's regardless of what is supplied. Yes,
so the idea it will be that, you know, it should be an incentive for the DisCos to meter their customers as quickly as possible and not rely on estimated billing. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's the idea. That is to ensure that metering takes effect very quickly, because less than half of my understanding is that less than half of the customers have meters. You know, have working meters. You estimate when you do not have meters, you have a damaged meter, or you can't get into the premises to adequately meter. Those are the circumstances. But it's also fair that NERC has then asked them to credit those customers apart from the fine. I think that makes it even more interesting to consumers and more useful to the consumers.
Yeah, I was just about to say that, because we see that the telecom regulator also does this fine from time to time. People say, oh, hold on, you find them, how does it benefit us? Is it just for your own pocket? But in this instance, they're being asked to be credited. How do they follow through to ensure that these directives that they have given, or these punishments that they have given to the DisCos, are followed through?
Okay, so usually prior to this time, that's where the cookie goes, where you have strong regulations, but you do not see through the process. I think NERC does much better now in terms of enforcement and monitoring. You know, there are reportorial obligations. DisCos are supposed to provide certain information periodically to NERC. And with that, they're able to estimate, they're able to determine who is doing what they ought to and what they ought not to. I think there's stronger enforcement now. I mean, it can be a bit slow. That's why we're going back to 2024, but it's more better. And they're supposed to report to NERC when all of these are done. So I think enforcement is much stronger. And we seem to make some progress in that respect.
What exactly is the challenge with metering? Because here we are still talking about estimated billings. How many years after? We've seen minister in, minister out, come up with different plans to see how they can get many Nigerians metered. And still, it's still a situation whereby a lot of Nigerians are still either paying for the meters if they need one, or are unable to get these meters. What exactly is the challenge, given that we've also been able to set up a number of metering companies here in Nigeria?
Okay, the challenge largely is historical. If you had only 20% of your people metered, or much less than 50%, say 35 to 40% of your people metered, amongst those who were metered, the meters are no longer good quality meters. It will take you time. Recall that government does have, and I'm not standing for the government, can't be a critic at times, but in this case, I think historically we've had that challenge, and it would take a while to get over that challenge. That's one point. Second point is that the government income does not continue to increase such that, and even when the income does increase, so much should be done with that income. That's another point you need to take into consideration. There are other options like people paying, but the question is how many people can pay, and in cases, there have been a lot of regulations, and then you find out workability at times. Then at some point, you will pay, and then you get credited, or the DisCo deducts that amount from your invoice. But so many people can't even afford to pay. So it's a potpourri of various challenges in the sector around metering, and there's been a lot of metering initiatives, from the meter asset provider, you've got the national metering, you've got the presidential metering initiative. You've got those, there have been improvement, but we're not quite where we should be, because for so long there was a lot of neglect. But it's improved, particularly in Lagos. I'm fairly certain it's improved. I've got involved in one or two instances where the DisCos have then provided meters to the would-be customers or consumers. So I think that it's improved, but we're not where we should be. And lack of is a challenge. Maybe with states taking over the sector, there can be more focus around metering to make it more investor-friendly.
It's interesting that some of the DisCos that were sanctioned, a number of them already have some regulators coming up in the state as well. How is that supposed to function when you have, issues like this? You understand these infractions were committed between July and September. Do you think that there could be a conflict of rules, or will I say double jeopardy for those for the DisCos that are affected by this sort of, this sort of charges?
I think it will be an accounting treatment. Recall that DisCos are going to set up subsidiaries in the states that have taken over the electricity market are still subsidiaries of the holding DisCo. So I think it will be an accounting treatment, and not necessarily double jeopardy. It will be an accounting treatment. If it's a particular DisCo that is now at fault, which a part of the entire DisCos, a particular DisCos subsidiary, they will treat it on the group level and it will be an accounting treatment. I don't think it will be double jeopardy. I don't think it will be.
For the DisCos, do you think that they have room to make a case for themselves?
I don't think so. Whether the law allows them to, fair hearing, yes, but whether NERC, and I think that's why it took a while to get to this point. They wanted to be absolutely certain that there was justification around these fines and the steps taken. That's why it took a while to get to this point. And of course, they wouldn't make this public without first check properly. I'm one of those who criticized NERC around implementation. Brilliant regulations, orders, but implementation has been a challenge. So it would be unfair for me to then also criticize when they are doing their bit to ensure that implementation is properly done. I think that they've thought it through, and there was a process to reaching this point. DisCos may make a case. There may be situations where very limited, where that amount may be reduced, which I very much. But I think in the most, it would be that it stays as it is.
Because I'm also wondering, for a sector that is looking for an injection of fresh funding, a sector that has been struggling somewhat with funding, and part of the reasons why we're saying all of this, will I say, delineation, band A, band B, or we've made investments in some areas, some people should pay more, and people still groaning under the, will I say, the weight of electricity bills. You now have this sort of fine being slammed on them. Do you think that it could affect their own viability in any way?
Okay, so you've got to look at it from two angles. There's unjust enrichment. From an unjust enrichment point of view, if you did not meter and you did not adequately bill and you are making assumptions, and that assumptions are not within the law, it would be unfair to not then punish. It then means you're telling everyone else, those other 3 or so that were not punished, you're then giving them the incentive to go ahead and do the same thing. So you can look at it from that angle, and you can look at it from your own angle. But I'm sure they've looked at the financials, they've taken a holistic view of the entire thing before reaching this point. You know that DisCos are required to submit their financials periodically to NERC. So I do not think this decision, whilst I'm not a part of, I do not think this decision was taken. I'm not a part of it. I do not think this decision was taken. I'm not a part of it. I do not think this decision was taken. I'm not.
Well, Dr. Oni, one question in all of these that I would love to find out from you is how this regime will be sustained with state electricity regulatory commissions coming up. Lagos State already has one, and a number of states are already coming, up with theirs as well. Do you see this kind of regime being sustained, or do you see it sustainable? What will be the role of an NERC in this kind of situation, in the near or far future?
Okay, that's a good point. I've always said that at some point, electricity will become an electoral item. So if the states do not do enough to attract investment and ensure that there's consumer satisfaction, then those states will be in trouble, and the governors may, as long as the elections are fair, may lose their elections. Now, in terms of sustainability, those states which do not take over the electric sector in their own state will continue to be under NERC. It's not automatic, and it's only about 11 or 13 states now. Other than that, remember, we've got 36 states and the FCT. FCT will remain under NERC if my analysis is correct. And you've got over 20 other states which are still under NERC and may be. So I expect that some of these states, it will be a steep learning curve for a number of them. Many of these states are just going to replicate some of what NERC is doing. Yeah. Because there are issues around tariffs, there are issues around subsidy. So sustainability for me from a federal level will remain. From a state by state, I think states would have to work out what works for them, whether they want consumer satisfaction, whether they
essentially
want
you're saying, Dr. Oni, my apologies for butting in again. Essentially, you're saying that this instruction from NERC is essentially just for states that are still under the authority of NERC and not for states that have already taken over with their own state electoral regulatory commissions.
Generally speaking, yes and no. I'll say yes and no because this is for 2024. So states which hadn't done that before 2024, they would have to, everyone would have to comply. It's just how payment will be done. I think an accounting treatment. So if for example, Ekiti already had a subsidiary set up by Benin DisCos, then it will be Benin DisCos, maybe a particular subsidiary will bear the brunt. So it will depend on the accounting treatment, and I leave that for the accountants. But I think it would apply to everyone. But after this time, anything from that cutoff date for each state, it will not apply to those specific states because they then have the laws that govern them, separate from the Electricity Act.
So what should consumers of electricity, should they feel reassured by the move that NERC has taken on these DisCos?
Yes, I think they should to a large extent. And then they should then begin to ask the electricity regulators in their own states. For those who have taken over electricity regulation in their states, residents should begin to ask similar questions, make similar asks of those the regulator and of the DisCos. But yes, I think there's a level of reassurance, particularly if implementation is well done and NERC ensures that the DisCos do. And consumer sensitization too is critical. Let consumers know and let consumers go through the process of reporting airing DisCos.
Well, I hope that this encourages them to do so. Mr. Ayodele Oni, we have to thank you so much for your contributions on Sunrise Daily this morning. He is an energy expert and has been speaking to us virtually. Well, this is where we wrap up today's edition of Sunrise Daily. We have to thank you so much for being a part of it. Thank you for watching. I'm Maokwe Ogun Yusuf.
It's just day one in the week. Expect more and expect more powerful. Stay with Channel Television. The business news is on the hour. I'm Ayo Makinde. Enjoy the rest of your week.